In this video, I take a look at my GT Omega art rig after using it for well over a year, almost 2 in fact, and ask, am I still happy with this rig? Have I made any changes to it? And do I regret buying it? Let's find out now from an older gamer's perspective. In the last 18 months, I have released 89 videos to this channel. This will be number 90. And of all those videos that people watch, comment on, like or dislike, my GT Omega art rig remains in the top 15 of my most viewed videos. First of all, I just want to thank you all for your views, your subscriptions, and of course your comments, which have all been invaluable as I proceed on my personal journey in sim racing, while at the same time trying to stay sort of within my budget. So a big thank you to everyone for all the help you have given me so far. Keep commenting and telling me where I'm going wrong. Although as an English person, please accept my pronunciation of non-English words and even some English words is always going to be terrible. Anyway, back to the point of this video. After nearly 2 years of using the GT Omega art rig, am I still happy with what I bought with my own money? To answer that question, let me take you through a long-term review of the GT Omega art, show you the changes I made, and be absolutely honest about what I would do differently if I had the chance to do it all again.
Let's do this.
Thoughts after nearly 2 years use. The GT Omega art rig is one of GT Omega's lowest priced rigs. Controversially, in the world of sim racing at least, it's not a rig based on the aluminium profile sort of standard. Instead, it is a square tubed rig, and in my case, it has an XLRS seat planted on top of it. Remember, when you buy a rig, any rig really, the seat is often not included. In my first review of the GT Omega art from April 2023, I said, "It is for me personally the ideal companion for my VR racing with the Quest 2. It sits nicely in the corner of my man cave, and it really is a joy to use. But if you can afford it, and you do have the room, and your body can cope with getting in and out of a low chair, it's probably the best sim rig you can get at this price range." But what do I think nearly 2 years later? Without a doubt, I am still very happy with this rig, although to be honest with you, I don't really think about it very much at all, and that's probably because it just works. It just does what it should do without complaint or fuss or even much intervention from me. It just works. I mean, occasionally I clean it with a duster, and that's about as much maintenance as I ever need to do with this rig. Otherwise, the rig just sits there waiting for me to race. I don't have to set anything up. I don't have to adjust anything. I just sit down, plug in my Quest 3, and I race. It really is that simple, and one of the key advantages over moving away from desk-mounted rigs, and also from my personal experience, better than building one yourself or using one of the deck chair variants of sim rigs. Although it has to be said, if you are short of money, both of these are valid options, possibly. I don't know, the self-build one probably makes more sense than the deck chair one to me, but that's just my personal opinion. For the GT Omega art, I've never had to tighten any bolts or replace any bits. The art and the XLRS chair do their job impeccably, race after race, and for value for money, that for me makes this a fantastic rig. Over time, I have adjusted the back of the seat and the distance from the wheel a bit. You know, I fine-tune these things. But once I found a sweet spot that worked personally for me, the chair stayed in that position and remained as comfortable today as when I first bought it. There's the occasional squeak from it, but nothing that I can really hear when racing. It's absolutely fine. Originally, I used this with the Thrustmaster T300 and a basic pedal set, but since then I've upgraded to the Moza R9 and the T-lcm load pedal set. Fitting for either of these wheels or pedal sets was very easy using pre-drilled holes, and I have yet to experience any movement from the pedals or the wheelbase. although I did have an issue with the height of the wheel, which I will talk about later in this video. But yeah, in my first video review of this rig, I predicted the art would cope well with my expansion needs, and it has. So overall, I'm happy, right? Well, not quite.
I just wanted everything to be perfect.
Things I love about this rig and things I don't. I do love how the art is low maintenance. It just really needs the occasional dust and is always ready for me to do a spontaneous sim racing session, night or day. I also love the weight of this rig, by which I mean it doesn't accidentally get nudged when someone walks past. It's heavy enough that it can nudge somebody back. And it doesn't move either if I sit down heavily in it. It just stays where it is like a rock. That means I can always rely on it being stable and in exactly the right place in my room to maximize the space I have available to me. Moving on to the RSXL chair. I do love that the chair has these holes here, which are great for mounting the HF8 and also for poking through the cable that attaches to my Quest 3. It is a small thing, I know, but having used a variety of chairs at the Sim Racing Expo earlier this year, I have come to regard the small things as the important things. A cable that's just dangling or looped over the top is really less than ideal when it comes to sim racing. Other things I love about this rig is the ability to get the cable management done with just a few Velcro straps. It's an important point of tidiness that should not be overlooked in sim racing, considering how many cables we all probably have. The rig is also very solid. I've never had a time when a sudden jab of the load cell brakes has caused the rig to move or flex or anything along those lines. It's as solid can be. Things I don't love about this rig are few and far between, but mostly I am not keen on how low it is. And as a man of a certain age, I do sometimes struggle to get in and out of it. I have been advised to put it on a wooden plinth, but I have yet to find the time for that project, which means I mostly just complain about how low it is. I also could do with a bit more room on the floor when I get in and out, although this problem is specific to me as I also have the optional flight pack fitted. Without these, the bars along the floor here, which are used to support a center-mounted joystick mount, would not be there. So, yeah, that's more of a me problem than an Amiga GT problem. The other thing I don't love about this rig is the lack of infinite adjustment on the pedal deck. And instead, you have these pre-drilled holes where you can go up a small amount or down a small amount. This does mean the pedal plate is mounted in a very solid way and never flexes, but it also means you have to slightly compromise on the angle of your pedals. The process of altering the angle of the pedal deck is also not particularly quick. It doesn't take very long, but for people who like to adjust their pedal angle to suit the type of car they are driving, this is probably not the rig for you. That being said, where I have the pedals set now has always proved comfortable and never induced fatigue in my legs or my ankles. The last thing I am not keen on with the GT Amiga Art rig is the amount of flex in the steering mount when it is at maximum extension. So it's at the maximum height it can go to. This is something I have discovered only recently, and as it is a very specific issue with a very specific solution, I'm going to deal with it in the next section of this very video.
It's just putting me more on edge.
Steering plate flex. As mentioned in the last section, the steering mount is probably my biggest and possibly my most major complaint about this rig. It is, however, probably only going to be an issue to anyone who is tall like me at 6'2". Initially, I didn't see the problem, mainly because for about a year and a bit, I had the steering mount set to something like this. This is fairly low in the world of sim racing, I know, and probably set like this because I was replicating my real life car and daily drive the VW ID3. Yes, I drive an electric car. Yes, I love it. It's the way it is. Let's accept it and move on. However, Chatting on my Discord group, I was advised that this low mounting was probably not ideal for racing, mostly from an ergonomic point of view. This made sense as I remembered all the motor racing I've been watching, in particular the DTM, and realized that yes, the wheels in these cars are always a lot higher. So I decided to adjust the height, which is just a matter of loosening off these adjustment screws, then dragging the tubular steel mount upwards and towards the driver. All of this in turn seemed to reduce any fatigue I had after a long and particularly aggressive race. So it's all good, right? Well, not entirely. Raising the wheel like this meant it had to go to its maximum extension because of how tall I am. And that meant there was a lot less metal trunking inside the tube that supported the plate on which the heavy R9 wheelbase sat. This led to some alarming flexing in the wheelbase's position, which I could feel mid-race. I really could. You can see it here. The wheel plate can move up by as much as 10mm. That's about 3/8 of an inch. And frankly, that's a little more flex than I'm comfortable with on a wheel plate that hosts a 9 Newton-meter direct drive wheel.
Why is this so hard?
Steering plate flex, an easy solution. Fortunately, GT Omega have developed an easy-to-fit solution to this flexing in the wheel plate problem by offering cockpit support bars, which, while not costing the earth, do cost a fair bit to ship. I'll come back to that later. That being said, it did arrive fairly quickly, the parcel comprising of some solid-looking parts, the sort of quality I have come to expect from GT Omega, along with a bag of screws and bolts and some basic tools. Oh, and some instructions as well, but hey, instructions are something you only read in an emergency, am I right? Fitting is just 4 bolts per strut, the 2 at the bottom fitting into vacant pre-drilled holes, the top ones requiring me to undo the bolts, holding the wheel plate in place and inserting them again with the support bar fitted into its new position. However, it became apparent that I wasn't going to be able to have the wheel plate as high as I wanted it to be. Here you see the maximum extension of the support bar. Any higher than this and the adjustable screw in the middle will no longer be in contact with the top part of the support bar, meaning that it'll be pretty much useless for stopping any flex. It just won't be doing anything at all. So with this established as the maximum height for the support bar, I lowered the main struts to match and tightened everything up until I was able to remove as much flex as possible from the wheel plate. With both sides attached, it was simply a matter of adjusting the support bars until they were able to remove as much flex as possible from the wheel stand. The whole operation took me about half an hour per side, but only because I decided not to take the wheelbase off the wheel plate, and that did make the whole process a bit more fiddly. I also didn't want to move my rig to fit the back strut, so that took a good deal more faffing than it probably should have done. But no matter, once it was done, the process of adjustment took only a few minutes and I could step back and see the difference straight away. Now when I try to move the wheel plate up and down, it just doesn't want to move. It is rock solid, and that's great. It's a relief, to be honest with you. The only problem is the wheel plate is now about 2 centimeters lower than I ideally wanted it to be. Not much, I know, but the sinking feeling in me says that if I had an aluminium profile rig, this probably would have been easily possible to get the exact height that I wanted. I mean, don't get me wrong, I am pleased with these support bars. They do remove the flex, and it has allowed me to place the wheel plate much higher than it was. But there were trade-offs to accomplishing this, and to be honest, this has slightly reduced my respect for the GT Omega rig.
Fair enough.
Conclusions. So, given all this fun I'm having with the GT Omega Art, and the fact that a fairly cheap part fixed the only major downside I had for this rig, albeit not exactly in the way that I would have wanted, do I still recommend this rig? The answer is complicated. On the one hand, this is a great budget rig that, when twinned with the right seat, will probably give you years of good service, years of comfortable sim racing, and years of being maintenance free. It certainly has been a significant factor in my day-to-day enjoyment of sim racing.
I feel a butt coming out.
But the shipping costs in 2024 from the UK to the EU are now a killer. When I bought this rig with the XLRS chair and optional flight stick mount, shipping was free from GTO Omega in the UK. Today, that same setup, rig, chair, flight stick mount, would be a bit cheaper as the price seems to have gone down, but shipping is now €59, meaning the total price difference between what I paid then and what it costs now is only about €50 cheaper, as shipping has pretty much swallowed up all of the price reduction. And this large shipping cost is not just restricted to rigs. The cockpit support bars, which are not that heavy, cost €29 just for shipping, which pretty much doubled the purchase price of this quite frankly necessary upgrade. Short story long. If you buy this rig, you need to be aware that spare parts or upgrades will have to come from GT Omega in the UK. And if you are not in the UK, then shipping is liable to be expensive, no matter how small the part is. And all of that makes me wonder if I shouldn't have just originally paid a little bit more and bought an aluminium profile rig from a European-based supplier. At least then, if I bought an 80/40 profile rig, for example, I would be pretty sure that any spare parts or upgrade parts that I might want or need could be easily sourced from a variety of places, not just the one supplier. That gives me choice and pricing options. Both of these are missing with the GT Omega Art rig. So, after nearly 2 years of owning the Art rig, would I still recommend it? For now, I am satisfied with the Art rig, but if I had to go back in time, I would tell my past self to spend a little extra money on a profile rig instead. In the long run, I would have probably saved money. Let me know in the comments if you are thinking of buying a rig and which one or which type you are likely to buy. In the meantime, I hope you found this video helpful, and until the next one, race clean, and I'll see you on track.
You won. You drove a great race.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click the like button, and if you haven't already done so, subscribe. Click the little bell icon if you want to be notified of any future videos.